Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you to our Facebook Friday live session. We're live here on June 18th at about noon Central Time, so it'll be 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you're tuning in after that, you're probably watching the recording. But I want to welcome all of those of you that are watching the recording. Typically, we get about 95% of the people that come to this call participate on the recording. We're happy to have you here, and we continue to respond to messages in chat if you have a question. So if you're watching the recording, you can go ahead and put something in the chat. Today, we're going to be talking about this idea of climbing the freelancing ladder in these online systems. And one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they find out there's this thing called online freelancing, and they rush in and they think it should work just like their job. And if they were making $60,000 a year in their job, they put their profile up and they start getting work at the rate of $60,000 a year. And it doesn't work that way, and this is where a lot of people bounce off these systems because they don't understand that there's a couple different things that you need to do as you're beginning to work on these systems that assures your potential buyers that you are an effective freelancer, you know how to work with a freelancer, you know how to make things happen. So that would be what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about the different rungs on that ladder and how you might approach that process so you get up the ladder quicker. And so we'll just jump right in. And so the first rung on the ladder is putting your profile together. And, we all are in different sites right now. We're on Facebook and you have a profile there if you're in Facebook. If you're on LinkedIn, you have a profile there. And all of the profiles, depending upon the system you're in, are a little bit different. Well, it is really important when you're online freelancing that your profile is different, because if you write a good profile, it will help do the selling for you. None of us likes to talk about how good we are at something or that kind of thing. And a good profile will do that selling. And it will do that selling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you don't have to be glued to the phone or glued to the screen or whatever it might be in order to engage people. And that's really the important aspect of this, is that these are global systems. You can get people coming in from all around the world, all hours of the day and night, and they're looking for talent to help them with their job. And if you've taken a resume and you've just put it on one of these systems, the buyer is going to look at that and they're going to see what's largely a chronological history of what you've done over time. And that is all wrong for these online freelance systems, because what the buyer is looking for is they're looking for somebody they can work with and quickly understand what skills they have. It's irrelevant to put detail about your career in there unless it specifically relates to the work that you're really willing to do in the future. And what happens is when a buyer looks at your profile and they see lots of irrelevant information in there, they immediately make the judgment that this person isn't very sophisticated. They're not giving me the information I want. There's a lot of extra stuff in here that is not relevant. And I don't want to start working with a freelancer that's going to give me a lot of extra yammer. So that's why it's very important not to tell your whole story, but to tell your best story as it applies to the freelancing work that you want to do. And so that's rung one of the ladder, and very important to doing that. Of course, that's something that we talk about in our freelance training programs, and something that we talk a lot about on our Tuesday night webinar for people that are members of our program. So something that requires some perspective on as you begin to do this stuff. The next rung of the ladder is doing relatively inexpensive, short jobs in the field of online. For the most part, as a freelancer, you're not going to see, we want to hire you at $60,000 a year. Your profile looks great. Press the button, you're hired, and you're busy for the next year. The idea in the mind of freelance buyers is what they want to do is they want to have you try out a little tiny job, something that would take you maybe an hour or two to show them what level of skill you have around this particular thing. And let me give you a few examples. Let's say you come out of corporate America and you've worked in the marketing department, and they want to hire you to make a PowerPoint presentation for them. You know, they're not going to hire you for 12 months at a certain rate to do that. They're going to give you a 5-slide presentation or something like that, and they're going to give you a list of what they want in the presentation, and they're going to see how you put that PowerPoint presentation together, and they're going to see if you really know what you're doing. And if you've been in a management position at all, you know that when people are turning stuff in, you know, people write reports that that you manage and that kind of thing. Some people write great reports, some people not so much. And that's exactly what these buyers are doing, is they're looking at the quality of your work. They don't have the opportunity to do an in-person interview, which is the way we used to all get hired. You know, you'd get your resume and tuck it under your arm and walk into the HR department or walk into the person that's hiring, and you'd have an interview. That's the way it worked. You know, that's what we all kind of grew up with for many years. Now it's different. You know, it's just the mechanics and the availability of virtual communication has shifted the way all that happens. And now, you know, we've all heard about the person that can talk a good game. In fact, in my career, I certainly hired a number of those who in the interview did very well, but in actuality didn't do well in the job. Conversely, I hired a number of people over the years who were, you know, sort of what I would say average in the interview, but they really excelled once they got in the job. So once you start to see the output of their work, you have a different perspective on that. And many people that you hire, you can't tell until you see that over time. In the online world, usually that begins with a little piece of work. And so typically somebody is going to pay anywhere from $15 to $25 per hour, basically, for you to do that little piece of work. And that's something that you would typically take an hour or two to do. We suggest that you find something that takes an hour or two to do, because you don't want to go into a job getting paid a low rate that goes on for months and months and years and years. And thanks very much for that heart. Always appreciate the likes and the hearts. Thank you, Paul. And good to see everybody. And we'd love to see where people are calling in from and that kind of thing. So the idea is you're going to work for $15 an hour to $25 an hour in that first job. You don't want to commit to a $3,000 job at that rate, but you are willing to put, you know, what we would describe the phrase skin in the game. You know, $20 an hour may not be an ideal rate for you, you know, and you look at that, and I've had people look at that and say, $20 an hour, I don't want to work for $20 an hour. That seems like, you know, I'm not getting paid very much. And I said, well, how much did you make, you know, or how much do you make in your job, or how much were you making in your job if they're retired? And they would say something like, oh, I make $40,000 a year. And I said, well, at what rate, what hourly rate is that? And I said, well, I never really thought about it. Let's see. And, you know, when they do the math, $40,000 a year is exactly $20 an hour. And so what they're turning up their nose at something that is not a it's the same rate as they were working before. Plus, they have the flexibility to work at home, work in their comfortable clothes, work at something on their schedule, so they're able to earn it at that rate. So the first thing to do is to make sure you multiply out the rate you're working at to see where that is. Now, let's explain a different scenario. Let's say you're making $100,000 a year and you want to learn how to write articles, or you want to start writing articles for people. You've got good writing skills, and you see an article that speaks to something that you know a lot about. Could be, one of my favorite examples is organic gardening. Somebody wants you to write a 500-word article, but they're only going to pay you $50, and it might take you 2 or 3 hours to write that article. It's 500 words. In the old days before online, most articles that were written for magazines, I wrote a few along the way, and they tended to be 1,000 words, 2,000 words. They were pretty beefy, sometimes even 4,000 words. And now, because people read online and they fidget in their chairs and they get nervous and their attention spans shorter, the most articles that you see are going to be in the 400 to 600 word range. That's the optimum for online. And somebody might say, well, I need to communicate more than just 400 to 600 words. Well, the idea is you do 2 articles or 3 articles, and they're short, digestible pieces of content. And so that's what you're going for. But let's get back to the person that makes $100,000 a year. And they're going to, for $20 an hour, they're going to spend 2 or 3 hours, and they're going to write this article, and they're going to submit it to the client. Well, the client asked you to write that article, but they also asked 3 or 4 other people to write the exact same article. And they're going to look at what comes back and say, does this person really know what they're talking about? That kind of thing. And when you're a baby boomer or 50 plus, you've got a few decades of knowledge, of experience that you bring to the writing that you do, where somebody that's, might be just out of college or graduating high school and gone into a trade and then writing an article of things relevant in that trade, they don't have that depth of experience. So usually if you're doing the right kind of job, this is an audition for you. And I tell people to think of it as you're being paid to interview. Now, you wouldn't expect to be paid $100,000 at the rate of $100,000 a year to interview. In fact, a lot of interviews that I went on, you never got paid. In fact, most of them, they might give you a plane ticket if it was in a different city, and they might put you up overnight, but they're not going to pay you or compensate you in any way. So you have to reframe this to look at how you're focusing on, this kind of work. And when you look at it from that frame of you're being paid to interview from the bigger amount of work that is coming, that helps you understand what's going on here. Because most buyers hiring an online freelancer are not looking for somebody, and I'll repeat that, not looking for somebody to do just one job and disappear. They're looking for talent that they can continue to work with over time. And it's not uncommon to get a contract once you have demonstrated that you have expertise in a certain area. I was talking to somebody about this the other day where they had bid on something, and the client realized they had deep expertise in this subject matter, and they came back and offered a much higher rate to this person, both based on their writing skill and more importantly on their background and their expertise in this field. So that's what people are looking for as they put all this together. And you really, I had one of our members said, so what you're saying is you really have to check your ego at the door. And yes, that's very much what this is about. It's I'm not going to work for $20 an hour, or I'm not going to give them my the benefit of my knowledge for that low of money. No. We live in a different world, every time you go into a new situation, especially if you're transitioning from working in a company to online, you're talking to a completely different audience, and you have to build your credibility with that new audience. The good news is you can build your credibility very quickly by doing these small jobs. And this is the mistake that people make, is they try to tackle the bigger jobs as they're getting started. And what they do is they might get a big job and they might get a big payday somewhere along the way, but they don't get that recommendation rating that they're looking for, that's 3, 4, or 5 stars. The third rung of the ladder, and this one is the last one that we're going to cover today. I mean, the ladder goes on for a while, certainly, but in getting started, people make a lot of mistakes as they get started. So the idea is that you want to get to know that client. You know, they will start out with a simple assignment: make a PowerPoint presentation, write an answer to a customer service question, and they'll provide you with the description of the answer, but they're looking to see, are you a good writer in terms of taking that information and putting it into an email that would go back to a client. So that's how they might test a customer service person. There are literally thousands of skills in there. And when you connect with that person initially, you're only going to connect on one job. It might be like proofreading. It might be the customer service response. It might be make me a PowerPoint. It might be write me a simple article. There are lots of what we call audition jobs that freelancers, freelance buyers looking for ongoing talent will ask you to do. And so when you understand that, this all begins to make more sense, and it becomes much more understandable in terms of what your compensation will ultimately be, how you can leverage your skill set into that. I mean, it just makes sense that if you know how to write, and there's a buyer on there that wants you to write something for them, and you're competing with, then this is what happens, because a lot of freelancers don't understand this. When they ask for a writer, there are some freelance writers that say, I can write on any topic, I can do anything, any topic, anytime, any length of article, that sort of thing. And that's not what the freelance buyer is looking for, because typically what that writer will do is they will Google the subject manager and subject matter. Let's say your topic was how to open a hot dog stand, and they're gonna Google how to open a hot dog stand after they get the job, and then they're gonna write the article. But if you've ever opened a hot dog stand or helped somebody else open a hot dog stand, you have a lot more knowledge and a lot more, much greater understanding of what the processes are, and the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of doing all that. So you really have something to hang your hat on, and you're going to do a much better job with that article than somebody else. So that's really an important concept, that you connect exactly at the level of the work that you want to do. And sometimes when freelance buyers and freelancers connect, the freelancer wants to immediately vomit all over the freelance buyer. Hey, I can do this for you, and I can do that for you, and I can do this other thing for you, and then there's several things over here I can do for you. And that is not what you want to do. You want to demonstrate that you can do this one job very well, and then learn how to have the conversation over time. Because if you do that job well, the freelance buyer is going to come back to you. They might get you on the phone. They might do it back and forth through chat or email or whatever it is. But they might ask you, well, gee, tell me a little bit more about your skill set. Tell me a little bit more about your background. And that's when you have the opportunity to expand the growth of the work that you do for them. And you have the opportunity to expand the fee that you charge them. And that's a very important aspect of this. Too many people think the amount of money that they make on the very first job they do online is the amount of money they're going to make forever. And that's what's a huge mistake. It just doesn't work that way. And so, just something to think about as you get on those first three rungs on the ladder, that's where that's going. So I wanted to take a few questions. If you have any questions about getting started as a freelancer, and of course, even if you're listening to this call on the playback, pop something in there and we'll get back to you. Those of you that are participating from our private Facebook group, of course, you're already in one of our programs and you get a chance to ask questions on Tuesday night and through support any day of the week and on chat on our website. So lots of good stuff. Let me take a look at the comments here. I see Greg's here. Good to see you, Greg. How are you? Yes, very good. And great. Oop, hold on. Oh, that's the wrong button there. Okay, very good. So yeah, we're this coming week we're starting our master class, and if you're in our master class, we're looking forward to being with you for about the next 6 weeks. Our master class is coming next weekend, June 26th and 27th, and our pre-event starts tomorrow. So we're going to be helping people understand how to get the most out of the master class and that kind of thing. So looking forward to that. It's always fun. It's a lot of information packed into a relatively short period of time, but it's a great way to wrap your head around freelancing and understand how all that works. So, if you're in that program, we're happy to see you. Here's a good question. Let me see. All righty. I currently volunteer for an organization. Should I feature that in my Upwork profile at all, or just focus on featuring the skill sets that I'm acquiring there and doing for them? Great question. Yes, and it really points to a big mistake a lot of people make. When you create your profile on any of these systems, whether it's Upwork or Freelancer or justanswer.com or whatever it is, there's over 150 of them out there. You always want to consider your activity in volunteer organizations. You always want to consider hobbies and interests that you have. Those all are a rich source of what we call domains of knowledge. You have lots of expertise that's in there. And particularly now, I know because of somebody I recently worked with, a lot of interest in people that have any background in fundraising or putting on fundraising events for nonprofit organizations. As people now are starting to come out in the United States, more so as the pandemic is winding down. A lot more of that in-person activity is coming up. So great opportunity to do that. And then the other very important aspect of this, it's not just volunteer work, although that's a great source of that kind of information. But the other source is your interest. Are you a coin collector? Are you a fly fisherman? Do you enjoy camping? Are you an organic gardener or any kind of gardener? Or do you know how to, grow vegetables with a short growing season or whatever it might be? All of that knowledge can be brought to bear within your profile and help you work on the things that you want to work on. And this is one of the things that really delights me, is when one of our members, looks at the things they can do and they said, well, I come out of accounting, and so I could do spreadsheets, but I've had this lifelong interest in camping, and I really like the idea of writing articles about camping. And then instead of finding work that they're not especially fond of in the accounting realm and staring at spreadsheets, they get a whole new line of interesting work to do in something that they really enjoy. And that is what's possible. So many of us have been in our jobs for so long that we just think within that frame, we think that the only way I can earn is by doing what I've already been doing. And the ability to think outside that frame is so very important, especially with the audience that we deal with is basically 50 plus, because it's doing that new thing that really energizes you. I know that when I left corporate America, and the last company I worked for in that role was a big technology company, one of the very biggest, and I was doing PowerPoint presentations almost every day of my life in that work situation, and for me, if I never saw PowerPoint or had to give another presentation ever again, I was happy. And that's about the time I moved to Mexico. And when I moved to Mexico, I realized that it wasn't doing PowerPoint that I disliked so much. And it wasn't really a dislike. It's just that I'd spent 20 years explaining technology to people, and that was not a challenge anymore. It wasn't, I didn't get a lot of excitement for that. But as I started to explain online freelancing to people, just a few of my friends that knew that that's what I was doing, that I was freelancing from Mexico, and they would say, well, how are you doing that? And I would, help them get started. And when they got started, they said, one of them actually said, hey, you ought to create a program to teach people how to do this. And I said, really, you think so? And this guy said, yeah, you ought to create a program. And that was about 45,000 people. Later, we've had people come through our programs and workshops and that kind of thing over the last 12, 13 years. So for me, just thinking outside of the box opened up a whole new opportunity to work and to earn, and most importantly, do something that I enjoy doing. So this is what you want to think about. When you're looking at putting together your profile, you want to think about, what work am I doing now, in terms of skill set, and what things do I really enjoy? What domains of knowledge do I really enjoy? Do I enjoy baseball? Do I enjoy craft topics? Do I talk to somebody recently that was, I forget, their hobby was lapidary, I guess it was, and that's the hobby of polishing and cutting stones for jewelry and that kind of thing. And so you can bring all of that skill set into what we're doing here. So very important to think about those skills and bring those, find ways to have fun with this. That's the biggest message. If I just taught people how to work online, I mean, everybody can kind of get online and start doing what they, what they did before. And, but for a lot of us, it was like, I could not take one more tablespoon of that. I'm trying to remember. I think it was a Monty Python movie, and there's this guy sitting in a restaurant, and it's at the end of this enormous meal, and the waiter comes over and says something like, "Sir, would you like a chocolate mint?" And at first he says no, and then he says, "No, if I have one more thing, I'll absolutely explode." And the waiter encourages him to have the chocolate mint because it's so good, and it's this special chocolate that's come in from somewhere, and he's never tasted anything like it. And of course, this is the comedy. It's Monty Python, and the guy takes a bite of the mint, and he explodes. And so, ha ha ha. But that's the way a lot of us feel when we're working for the man or the corporation, and certainly had a wonderful time working in those jobs and working with people that are lifelong friends. And but you just reach a point where you just tap out. You can't do it anymore. And I talk to people like that every day on the phone, people coming into our programs, people on our Tuesday night call. And this idea of looking at something you love to do, you enjoy doing, even if you do some of the things that you're not crazy about doing to start, but start weaving those other things into your process. And that's a great way to do it. I remember working with somebody, and they had very good skills with spreadsheets and that kind of thing. They were very good with that, but they really wanted nothing to do with spreadsheets. And they started out doing spreadsheets for people, but they very quickly started doing spreadsheets for people that were in industries that they were interested in, or doing spreadsheets for nonprofit organizations that needed help organizing their record keeping or that kind of thing. And so they were combining their interest in what the nonprofit was doing with their ability to create spreadsheets and business reporting and that kind of thing. So that's a good question, and really encourage you to do that. And you know, the name didn't come through there, but that's certainly something we talk about on our Tuesday night calls. And if you're one of our programs, happy to go further on that and do that. So with that, we're going to bring this session to a close. Look forward to having everybody here. Be sure and like, comment, subscribe if you're watching the YouTube version of this. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Friday. Have a great week freelancing. Take care.